Hi everyone, Father Lamb here, and it's Wednesday the 16th of April. We're right here in the middle of Holy Week. What a holy time for each and every one of us. And I just want to say thank you again for all your prayers the last few weeks. It's been a little bit of a struggle, and as you know, a little over a week and a half ago or so, my brother-in-law died, and we just buried him last Saturday. So it's left kind of a big hole in our lives, and it hasn't been easy. So I thank you for your prayers. They mean everything. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And today, I think we're in Holy Week. I'd like to just go into the scriptures a little bit because we know the story. Like we know the story in our brain. We know that Jesus had a heck of a week. After Palm Sunday, and then he gets arrested. He's in the Garden of Gethsemane, and then he goes the road to Calvary, and he meets his mother, and Simon of Cyrene helps him, and then he's crucified between two thieves, and and then he dies, and then is raised from the dead. And like we know the story. But does the story enter into our hearts? And I think what we have to remind ourselves of is that the scriptures are alive. Like when God speaks to us through the scriptures, it's something that happens right now in the present tense. It's not something 2,000 years ago, just an historical event. It's something that happens now. And so I am going to read a little of scriptures today, just sort of maybe we all can kind of sit back, relax a minute, and let the scriptures speak to you. We know what happens. We know the story in our brain. We got to go down literally to the heart of it, see, and go down here. So I'm going to read from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 26, beginning with verse 36. And it's basically the agony in the garden. And Jesus invites all of us into that. At one point in our lives, Jesus is always inviting us into that garden. And just like he did, we're saying to God, take this cup from me, whatever you're struggling with. Your own issues, people that you love, you're losing, or sickness, or you're worried about your children, whatever it is. We all have concerns. We find ourselves there. But I think the thing that we have to remind ourselves is Jesus is there with us. So we don't face our struggles alone. We have Christ with us. So let these scriptures speak to you. Just settle yourself down, take a deep breath, breathe out. Just kind of allow yourself to be, and let the scriptures speak to your heart. Open up your heart. Let go of other distractions that are around you right now, and just listen and allow this passage to speak to you. Then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took along Peter and the two sons of Zebedee and began to feel sorrow and distress. Then he said to them, "My soul is sorrowful, even till death. Remain here and keep watch with me." He advanced a little and fell prostrate in prayer, saying, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." When he returned to his disciples, he found them asleep. He said to Peter, "So you could not keep watch with me for 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not undergo the test. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." Withdrawing a second time, he prayed again, "My Father, if it is not possible that this cup pass without my drinking it, your will be done." Then he returned once more and found them asleep, for they could not keep their eyes open. He left them and withdrew again and prayed a third time, saying the same thing again. Then he returned to his disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? Behold, the hour is at hand when the Son of Man is to be handed over to the sinners. Get up, let us go. Look, my betrayer is at hand." How often in our lives we find ourselves with Jesus right in that Garden of Gethsemane. And I think the thing that you and I need to remind ourselves of is Jesus gained strength by being in that garden. It wasn't like he was in the garden, now let's go get. He was going in there with all his weakness, all his humanness, praying that this could be taken away from him. When it became clear it was not going to be taken away, he yielded to the Father's will. And what good thing could happen from a 33-year-old man dying, so full of life and love, healing people, full of love? What good could come from that, from the human's perspective? But we know the answer: salvation for the entire world. And we see this happen so often in our lives that we open up our hearts to it, and we stop sleeping like the disciples. We sort of wake up to what's going on around us. My brother-in-law, Jim, as you know, and he struggled for 2.5 years with this cancer, and he prayed and prayed and prayed it would be God's will. that he find a cure and he find really a miracle. That's what he was praying for. But always underneath that, he kept saying, I want to do God's will, I want to do God's will. But he tried everything, my brothers and sisters. John Hopkins, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh for trials, all this stuff. And finally, just a few days before he died, he got the news from the doctors, nothing else we can do. And he just sort of folded up. And those last 3 days before he passed, after getting that news, really had a sense that Jim was right there in the Garden of Gethsemane, right with Jesus. And he had been praying all along, take this cup from me, I want to live. And when it became clear there's nothing else that could be done, when it became clear to him that God was taking him to himself, he then yielded to that and trusted the Lord. It's really a beautiful thing when you think about it, but it's very difficult, especially on the survivors. We have this giant hole in our family and in our lives right now. So what's the good news, right? Well, the good news is eternal life. The good news, the gospel, means good news. So the good news is we're all headed to heaven. That's the goal for all of us. And it's just hard to let go of people along the way, So let's use the symbol of Easter, like one of the symbols, which would be the butterfly, right? The butterfly is a symbol of hope, a symbol of resurrection. And to really understand the butterfly, we got to go back to its conception. What was it before being a butterfly? It was a caterpillar. It was a little tiny bug, if you will, a caterpillar on a green leaf in a forest, living a very restricted life, huh? And then after a while, that restricted life wasn't enough for that caterpillar. It became kind of moody and maybe discontent, right? This isn't enough. Aren't we all in that in our lives at times? We get restricted, life's hard, and we find ourselves, this isn't enough. Yeah. And so what happens to that moody, restricted caterpillar, that discontent, which some people would call a divine discontent, because God has made us for so much more. So then all of a sudden, out of that cocoon, all of a sudden that caterpillar is starting to grow these wings, see? And it becomes unrestricted. It becomes something that wants a bigger life, like we all do. And the instincts in that caterpillar tell that caterpillar that where there is true desire, there must be fulfillment. And in our hearts, even before we hear the good news, before we read the Bible, there's something in us that says we're made for more than this. We can't just live and die in the grave and that's it. There must be more. You think about someone you love that dies and you think, they gotta be living on. Life couldn't have ended right here in the grave. God implants that in our hearts that we're made for more, made for deeper fulfillment. And so that desire must be fulfilled. And so that wonderful thing happens that butterfly then emerges, and that beautiful, graceful butterfly, now endowed with beautiful wings, starts to soar, and it soars above that leaf, above that tree, above the whole forest. That's the true self. You and I are made for so much more than we see on this earth. And when we're going through the struggle, when we're in that Garden of Gethsemane, we've got to keep our eyes on that. Jesus endured the cross for sake of the eternal life to come and salvation history for the whole world. And he did that out of total love for us. And we have to get that message from here down to here. And so this week, my brothers and sisters, let's keep it simple. But I invite you just to enter into all of this week. Go to church. Go to the Holy Thursday, where Jesus washes the feet of his disciples, and you see what he's teaching us to do, to be servants. Where he institutes the Eucharist and says, do this in memory of me, so we have strength each week, because it's hard out there to live a Christian life. And he gives us the Eucharist, and how many of us don't take advantage of that? What a gift it is. And to walk through Good Friday, not to feel guilt and shame, but to experience the love of God, that he loves us that much, that he died for you personally and me personally. And we have to take it personally. And then we can enter into the beautiful Easter Vigil and Easter Sunday itself, where Jesus is risen and he offers us the gift of eternal life. Boy, it doesn't get any better than that, does it? I'd like to suggest one little thing this week. The disciples struggled to watch 1 hour with Jesus. They're all falling asleep. And you and I are falling asleep in life. We're distracting ourselves in a million ways with all the concerns that we have, and some of them are difficult. I'd like to suggest you take 1 hour this week and just be. No running around, no TV, no internet, no telephone. Turn it all off and just sit still and invite Jesus into your heart. Read the scriptures, pray your devotionals, but just spend some quiet time and watch 1 hour with the Lord, because mighty things can happen. Jesus gained the strength from going to his Father, and with that strength, He's overcome sin and overcome suffering and overcome the world and given us all the gift of eternal life. We need to enter into that to become part of it. This week, in the midst of all the struggles of our lives, let's ask God to give us that grace that we can watch with him 1 hour so we can experience the love he has for us and that eventually life eternal. God bless you.